Alex here, and today I am going to show you how to draw noses. Simple way and an easy way to remember. I upload weekly. Definitely subscribe and like if you are interested in learning how to do art. So thanks for stopping by. There we go, on to the drawing. To start, I'm going to be using a simple circle shape. This is going to be the end of our nose, and make sure you are drawing very lightly so that you can go back and shade afterwards. And it's easier to erase or add more if you are drawing very softly. Now I'm going around and I'm going to make the shape of the nose. Yes, it looks like a triangle, but I am not trying to include anything yet. And I know this doesn't look like a nose yet, but it will as we add more detail. Now I'm going to be adding some guidance lines for my shading. I'm not shading yet because a lot of people make the mistake of drawing solid lines too quickly, but I am just going to make those simple lines as a guidance to come back and shade later. I really only want to go in and find my shadow places. So now I'm going around and I'm going to draw that bottom part of your nose, the skin that connects your nostrils. The lower cartilage actually will split into two pieces compared to the upper cartilage, and on some noses you can see this, but on this nose in particular you cannot. So I'm not going to draw a line down the middle. I'm just going to draw underneath the nostrils and make a little circle under there. Now the nostrils kind of look like a upside down apostrophe. That's kind of how I think of it. So yeah, now I'm just going to go back in and start shading a little bit. So I'm going to press down a little harder with my pencil, and I'm just going in little strokes. Nothing too crazy here. I'm just going back in and paying attention to where these shadows are. And it's pretty simple here on out. After you get your nose structure, you just need to shade where your reference has the shadows. Now I want this nose to look more round because it's more of a bulbous shaped nose. So I'm going to have a little darker shading around, and it's going to lighten up till you get to that highlight right there in the middle. So make sure you're leaving a highlight somewhere on your nose. The brightest highlight is going to be where the light is hitting the nose and bouncing directly off back into your eyes. Just continue shading things in with little circles. If you want darker, press a little harder and go over that area again. Just make sure you're getting your lights and your darks correctly so that your nose actually looks like it has depth to it. Now with this nose in particular, you can see around the upper cartilage, it has quite a bit of shading where it's slightly puffy, pulled away from the nose. So I am not making a solid line. I will just go back in where that puffiness is, and I will shade with small circles. Like I said earlier, a lot of people do make that mistake with noses. They just draw a solid line from the top cartilage to the bottom cartilage, and it looks very cartoonish, and it doesn't actually look like a real nose. So try to avoid making that mistake when you're drawing noses or painting noses. Things don't usually have solid straight lines in nature, so keep that in mind. A lot of drawing is about shapes, just basic shapes. So if you can draw your basic shapes and learn how they are in space and shade them correctly, then you can just about draw anything. And for the nose in particular, knowing how to draw a spherical shape and shade it correctly will help you a lot. So if you want to learn how to draw a sphere, then I will have another video coming out soon on how to draw basic shapes in space. A lot of this is just understanding the anatomy of the nose, what's underneath the skin, so that you know where to put your shadows and how that skin will hug what is underneath. But a lot of it also is paying attention to your reference, whether it's from life or from a photo. You have to look at things with an artist's eye and be able to differentiate shapes and shading and light. And yeah, the more you practice, the better you'll get. So just keep going. And now I'm getting lighter with my shading because I am now at the ridge of that upper bone cartilage area. Also adding some more shading around that puffiness close to the eye. And usually people will have a line. You can't always see it, but it's right across the bridge of your nose and your forehead, right there. Sometimes you can see it, and other times you cannot. It just depends on the nose that you're drawing. And then it gets lighter again as it goes into the forehead. So there we have it. There's our first nose. Now I'm going to be drawing a projected nose with a dorsal hump. And I love the shape of this nose. It is so fun to draw. But anyway, so you're going to start with, instead of a circle, you'll be starting with an ellipse. If you look at the top of her nasal tip, you'll see a rounded heart shape. The tip is not pointed. Now I'm once again going underneath, and I'm making that triangular shape and going up and around, and I'm just getting that basic shape of the nose drawn in. I'm getting a shadow, and I will be drawing the nostril. If you can see, there is 2 pieces of skin underneath her nostril, and it is separated by a shadow underneath. So I'll make sure to incorporate that with a shadow line. Now I'm trying to draw in that nostril shape and also leave a lighter portion where that skin is kind of showing through in her nostril. You can see it's raised up a bit right there. So I'm going to make sure I leave that lighter. And I'm going to get that little shadow underneath. And I noticed that I didn't bring that nostril flare out quite enough. And if you can see, there is actually a triangular shape on her cheek right there in that shadow plane. So I'm just making a shape of that triangle and moving under. Now I'm going back in and I'm going to start shading and finding all of my shadow shapes. Like I said, everything is just made up of shapes. And you just have to look at things with an artist's perspective and find where these shapes are. So coming up from that apex area, the tip of her nostril and nose, I'm coming up to the bridge where there's that really fun shape that I just love to draw. It's so cool. And right along the right edge, you'll see that she's got a nice highlight, and then it comes down into this rounded shadow area that connects to the cheek. And there's always that line over the bridge of the nose, like I said, connecting to the forehead. And what's really cool about these shapes of noses is they have that flat spot right in between the rounded areas on the bone area, and it looks just so cool and it's so fun to draw. And then it comes down into that rounded spot on the nose, the apex. And remember, it is round, so you want to leave the highlight, and it's going to be darker around the edges usually, depending on your light source. But yeah, so I'm going to shade that tip of the nose pretty good, just like our reference photo. And I'm going to move in around the heart shape and just leave a pretty wide space for my highlight so that I don't mess up and accidentally go over my highlight. I like to leave more highlight than less at first, so I can make sure I don't draw over where I want my highlight to be. And I'm just going to make that highlight across that bone area now. And it's not a straight line. It does hug the curve of the nose and follow the curve. So that's fun. I love these shapes of noses. If you think that you don't have a pretty nose and you have one of these noses, you are incorrect. Because all noses are amazing and beautiful, especially in an artist's perspective. I love drawing all shapes of noses. Now I'm shading around that nostril area, and I'm going to come up into that big circular shadow. If you can see it in the reference photo, there's a big circular, almost squished ellipse shape of a shadow that connects to the nostril right there and the cheek. It's all about shapes and lights and darks, finding your values. You can create quite a bit of depth just by pressing a little bit harder where you need your shadow, and lifting when you need your highlight. The more rounded a figure is, the higher it's going to come up off the face. And so because of that, it's going to be lighter in color because it shows more light. And you just want to make sure that your darkest points are definitely drawn in really good so that you can tell, oh, that's, my nostril area. So now I'm just shading in that shadow like I said earlier and making sure that I have the depth that I'm wanting out of this nose to make it look like it's actually coming off the face like I want it to. Also, something to go by is you want your darkest dark next to your lightest light, meaning your highlight and your darkest shadow. Remember, I'm not trying to draw the actual shape of the nose. I am drawing small shapes that make up the nose. And in that sense, it's going to make it look a lot more organic and real than just drawing a shape of a nose. Also, please forgive my cracky voice today. I am recovering from a pretty good cold that I've had recently, so that's why my voice sounds pretty croaky today. There's going to be quite a bit of darkness right there, so I'm just going to make sure I include that. And once again, it's like this weird warped triangular shape, if you can tell that shadow that I made. It looks very triangular. I love how you can find basic shapes in everything, because we learn basic shapes, but you don't realize how often you're actually going to be using them if you're an artist. Also, anybody who uses a pencil or a pen to make things is an artist. Don't let people invalidate you. You are an artist. Okay? I used to let people get to me, but I don't let people get to me anymore. Now I'm going to draw the easiest, in my opinion, shape of the nose, because it is at an upward angle and there's a lot less space. Surface area, I mean. So you just draw your circle once again to start with that apex shape, and then we're going to go down and make our rounded triangular shape again for the nose in total. And now I'm going to just kind of block in those basic areas and come back and define our basic shapes that we have. This is a pretty simple shape, like I said. It's almost like an upside down heart with a rounded bottom. It's pretty simple. So yeah, now I'm just going to make some nostrils. And the nostrils have that little flap of skin that hang over, so I'm going to make sure to include that. They're not completely rounded like a bean. They have like a little flap, kind of like a kidney bean, I guess. There's also a couple of triangular shapes inside the nose right there, showing skin that will be lighter than the initial dark part of the nostril. So make sure you outline that so you know where your lights and your darks will be. But yeah, it's all about basic shapes. You can do this for sure. Now just start filling everything in with your shadows with little tiny circles, because that's how we do it. One tiny circle at a time. Oh, and right there, there's that split that I was talking about in the very beginning. That dark line I just made is the split between the bottom cartilage. And in this example, you actually can see it. So that's exciting. Yep, gonna start with my darkest shadows and move lighter in case I need to re-darken them after. I like to work in layers and keep putting more down if I need to, and fading everything into itself, so it's very soft edge. It's not hard. There's not a lot of hard edges on the nose. Besides, like, your nostrils. And that's probably the hardest edge you'll get. So there's that darker shadow around the very tip right there. Because of the light source, it's going to look darker. So the more you practice looking at something and picking out your shadow shapes, the more you'll find all these fun little shapey-doos that you can create. And I don't know, I just really enjoy it. And right there, I kind of messed up. I shook my hand and I ended up coming out a little too far, but I'm going to make it work. I'm just going to make the nostril wider. I think it worked out just fine, honestly. And that's a pretty good lesson when it comes to art. If you think you made a mistake, you can just overcome that by fixing it. Because it's not like everybody's going to see that and say, oh, you made a mistake right there. I can see that mistake. No, they're just going to look at your overall product and be wowed by it. They're not going to pick out every single detail because they did not sit there and draw it with you, so they're not going to see that. So don't worry about making mistakes. Definitely make mistakes because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. So don't be afraid of that. You can always just go around it and fix it. That's also why I draw very lightly, even while I'm shading, except these nostrils, obviously. I'm pressing pretty hard there. But the lighter you draw, the easier you can fade it into your background or draw over it if you need to. So I would highly suggest learning how to control your pencil to draw as light or as dark as you want it to be. It'll definitely come in handy. So there's our kidney bean shapes for our nostrils. If you look at my drawing, it doesn't even really look like a nose right now, but it will when I'm done. You just have to trust the process and keep building up your color and building in your shadows. Oh, and for control, that's also why I sharpen my pencil this long and I hold it the sideways like I do, because it actually gives me more control over my pencil, and I really like that. I like having control over my pencil. Otherwise, I make some really sketchy looking lines. I used to hold my pencil straight up and down while I was sketching, but I realized I couldn't draw as lightly as I would like, and so I learned to use an X-Acto knife and sharpen my pencil and hold it sideways, and it works really well. So yeah, there's our noses from different angles. If this video helped you at all, please like and subscribe and turn on those notification bells. It really helps me get found in the YouTube algorithm. And thank you for watching. I really hope this helped. Happy art making!